Today I'm going to show you how to make a simple but stylish sketchbook. Before we begin, you will need to gather the following tools: a ruler, sharp scissors, a scalpel or Stanley knife, an awl or other pointy tool that will pierce fabrics like leather, some strong cotton thread. Here I am using crochet thread. You will also need a solid bar of beeswax. You can find these at farmer markets or stockists online. A bone folder. You will need a strong needle. And you will also need some large sheets of good quality sketchbook paper and some thick card, or like I am using here, some leather or vinyl. This will be for the cover. A good tip is to go to the charity shop and hunt down old leather jackets or trousers or even handbags. Once cut up, they make excellent covers for sketchbooks. I have some really special paper I'm going to make my sketchbook out of. I have finally plucked up the courage to use this paper, as I bought it when I was in the Amalfi Coast in Italy, and I've held on to this paper for years because it is just so beautiful and I didn't want to waste it. Amalfi is famous for its historic paper production, and they sell beautiful handmade paper and stationery products, and I remember not really being able to afford any of these at the time, so instead I bought some of the paper that the sketchbooks were made out of, thinking that they would be really nice to use at some point. So yes, I am finally going to use my really nice paper to make a sketchbook. So first of all, you need to decide what size you're going to make your sketchbook. I'm making just over a postcard size sketchbook, so it's around A6 size. The really nice thing about this paper is it is very small sheets and it has a really rough edge, and when I fold the pages over, I'm going to have a really nice rough edge on my sketchbook, which will add to its overall look. When folding your pieces of paper, it is best to use a bone folder. So if you run the bone folder down what will be the spine of your book, it will give you a nice crisp fold. When bookbinding, a folded page is actually called a folio, and the pages are called leaves. When it comes to binding or stitching your sketchbook together, your sketchbook will be made of sections. The sections are made of your folios. Because my sheets of paper are quite thick, I am only able to use about 3 sheets or folios per section. So if you're using thinner paper, you'll be able to use more folios within each of your sections, and therefore have more pages. Don't worry if some of these terms may seem a little confusing at first. I will write a brief overview in the description below to help you on your way. You may notice here that I actually started with a larger section of 4 folios. I actually go back and take one of these folios out because I just felt that it was too thick for the awl to go through, and it would be too much effort for when I came to sew the book together. Now I have folded all my folios and put them into sections, you can now see how thick my final sketchbook is going to be. I am now ready to size up the cover, ready to fit my sketchbook pages. So here is me carefully working out exactly what size I want to make my cover. Now I do want to have it to wrap right around my sketchbook and tie at the front, so I am making it a little longer than if it was just a book format. It's going to have a wallet shape that wraps around the side of the book. I am carefully lining up my cover with the grid of my cutting mat so I get my cover nice and square so it fits nicely around my sketchbook pages. Then I'll cut it all to size, leaving about a 5mm overlap all the way around so that I have some space between the pages and the cover and to allow for my rough edges in my sketchbook. To make it look nice and neat, I don't want my rough edges of my folios overlapping out of the cover, so I'm just making sure it fits nicely and leaving a bit of an allowance for that. Another little tip here is if you wanted to make your book that little bit extra special and vibrant is you could glue a coloured end paper onto the inside cover of your book. All you need to do is grab some PVA glue, glue the paper, chosen paper onto the cover and then press it between some books so it's nice and flat and stuck hard, and there you have it. Now I have cut my cover to size, it's time to mark along the spine so that I can work out where I need to sew the sections into to make my sketchbook. So I'm carefully lining up the grid so it's nice and square, and I'm going to draw 6 vertical lines, one for each section. They're going to be about 2 or 3mm apart, depending on how chunky and wide your sections are to fit your sketchbook. Once I have carefully marked out my vertical lines where my sections are going to be sewn into my spine, I then mark a quarter way down that spine, halfway along, and then at a 3/4 point to mark where I'm going to make the holes to sew the binding in, so where my stitches will go. I then use the markings on the cover to mark each section in turn so that I know exactly where I'm going to punch the holes to sew each section into the cover. Next, I put something soft underneath my leather cover and I begin to gently poke the holes through the fabric where I will thread my stitching through. I then proceed to do the same thing over again with each folio page, carefully making holes where each of those stitches will go through and thread through onto the cover. I am now ready to start sewing the sections of my sketchbook together. First of all, I take a length of cotton thread. It doesn't need to be too long as we're just doing one section at a time. I then take my beeswax and run it through the thread 3 or 4 times. This actually strengthens the thread and prevents it from breaking and snapping so easily when you're sewing it together, and even when you're turning the pages of the book, it just gives it that little extra reinforcement, and it really does work well. So I definitely advise doing this little step, and don't miss this one out. So start by carefully threading your needle, and then once you are ready, take your first section, starting on the inside of that section, thread your needle through the central hole, pull the thread through, leaving enough of a tail to be able to tie a knot at the end, then thread through into the inside of the cover through the central hole in one of the vertical lines that you drew. Then bring it back through one of the next holes on either side. Threading back through your section. You can see me here, the hole is a little small, so I'm just widening the hole with my needle, as it can be a little fiddly to get the needle through all the pages. Then thread through the other hole on the other side, back through into the cover again, taking it through the outside cover, and then threading it through back through the central hole where you first started. Once you've brought that through, pull the threads tight. Make sure there's a bit of tension there and there's no loose threads. And if you pull it too tight, you may end up ripping the pages, particularly if you use thinner paper. So just to give it a nice even tension. So don't pull too tight, but don't let it go too slack either. And then take both ends and tie a double knot. And then cut the ends off, leaving a couple of centimeters on each side. And then when you turn it around, you have a lovely stitched binding on one side. Then all you have to do is repeat this for the remaining 5 sections, or however many sections you have in your particular binding. And it'll leave a lovely pattern and yeah, look really nice and homemade and make a really nice sketchbook. I don't know if you're the same, but I can get a bit precious about sketchbooks, particularly as I am quite the perfectionist. So what I quite often do is I do lots of my sketching on loose bits of paper, and then what I'll do is I will bind the sketchbook afterwards. So rather than filling a sketchbook, an already made one, I will draw on all these bits of paper and make the sketchbook afterwards. And it's kind of a nice different kind of way to put it together, and you don't end up being so precious about all those bits of paper and thinking, oh no, I'm going to ruin a sketchbook. You could always give this a try and make the sketchbook in the same way. Now you have finally finished sewing all the sections into place. Once you turn the sketchbook over, you can see how lovely the stitch binding actually looks. I am taking my time over the last little steps as I don't want to make a mistake in my sketchbook when I'm just nearly there and finished. And just to add a final finishing touch to your book, it's just to add the little tie wrap that bundles your sketchbook together. So I'm just marking 2 vertical holes, 2 slits with my scalpel, and I will thread the cord through here that will tie the final sketchbook together. I hope you have enjoyed this short tutorial on how to make a sketchbook. If you would like to have a go at this tutorial, I will write some extra notes in the description below to help you out. I will also put in a little timeline so you can refer back to certain sections of the video to help you do the more tricky parts of this tutorial. If you would like to see more from me, please do consider liking and subscribing to my channel, as I do have a weekly vlog and throw up regular tutorials and tidbits about my working life as an artist. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.